being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone now. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant. It was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. P&G now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, welcome everybody. It is December 20. Should I cheat? 28th, I would have said. Yep, December 28th. It is Monday. We survived my 50th birthday bash. We hopefully survived, and I mean that in these crazy times we're living in, literally and figuratively. Christmas, we stuck with our loved ones within our pods. We were responsible. Maybe we went for a beautiful walk on the beach. It might have been a bit cold, past our Kindred Spirits mailbox. But I feel rusty because I didn't do a show on Friday, and suddenly I'm thinking, I'm sure I've forgotten something. This is kind of like what will happen when we go back to traveling, where we will go through TSA, get on the plane, and then realize we have no socks and underwear or toothpaste or something like that. It's coming, and I think we just have to embrace it as well. Hello to my mom, who is watching, and Mr. Tom Morris. You will be featured in the Seated Soliloquy today. Here and eager for new insights. Tom says, it looks like Joseph is a mile from my house waving. Of course I'm waving to you. I didn't realize that, but now I'm definitely coming over to your house so we can drink absinthe together. So as I said, I survived my birthday. It is Fat Blogging Day. It is Monday. 180 sounds like dots, right? 180. 180.4. I've lost a bit of weight. In truth, I did not have dinner last night. I just had soup and a lot of red wine, too much red wine. I apologize to those who were around me. You know who you are, which is why probably to next week, after New Year's Eve, etc., it better be 182, 183, 184, because that would, if it doesn't rise, it would mean that I wasn't enjoying myself, and life is too short to just have soup all the time. You can quote me on that one. Well, today is National Downloading Day. So it is a day when we celebrate, I guess, the ability for us to download apps. But maybe it's also a day for everybody to celebrate downloading podcasts, downloading streaming shows like Corona TV. Downloading is maybe another word for investing in the creator revolution. So go and download, subscribe to your favorite show. Go tell someone else about your favorite show. Support the creatives, support the creators. That's how we can celebrate National Downloading Day. We got a whole bunch of birthdays to whip through. Jeffrey Frank, Saren Gut, Mr. Bonenbo himself, Saw R.P. Abrahams. Who else is there? Damon Hoff. To me, Damon Hoff is the most debonair, sophisticated, coolest guy that I've ever met in my life. He also happens to be my brother-in-law, Julian Kaplan, and of course, previous guest, Mr. Ted Rubin, who is now going on his 72-hour social media detox until the end of the year. So I guess he won't be watching the show today. That's okay. And then happy birthday as well, of course, to my LinkedIn connections over the course of Saturday, Sunday, and today. Now, of course, on my birthday, December 24th, I shared it with these two young up-and-comers, We have a feeling they're going to make it in the marketing world. It was just a very special day. Seth Godin and Professor Philip Kotler. I have to tell you that I went back and actually rewatched the entire show. It's the first time I've actually gone back. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. First of all, I watched David Rendell, the giant freak in pink, the whole, discover uniqueness by exploiting weakness. I watched that entire episode with my family. I wanted them to see, I wanted them to experience this idea that you are only embarrassed if you allow yourself to be embarrassed. It was just the most profound episode. But I went back and rewatched the whole episode with Seth Godin and Philip Kotler because I just couldn't write quick enough. And I went back and just, wrote down all the goodness, and I'll be sharing that with you over the course of the next days, weeks, months, etc. In fact, we'll get to that in a moment. Today, I'm not going to share any of that with you because I've got another luminary with me, Mr. Ian Schafer. Ian is one of the smartest marketers in the entire world. You will see why. I am not exaggerating. Ryan Fay is with me tomorrow. Ryan and I worked together back in the TBWA days. He is now the co-host of Food Network's The Grill Dads and Comfort Food Tour. He is the co-founder of Omelette, and he is a lover of beards, apparently. So Ryan will be with me, then Melanie Desiel on Wednesday. And then on Thursday and Friday, I am going to, there's Ian, but this is what I wanted to tell you. On Thursday and Friday, see, I just lost my whole momentum. I got excited. On Thursday night, December 31st, I am doing New Year's Streamin' Eve. Not New Year's Rockin' Eve, but New Year's Streamin' Eve. I will be streaming live from 10 p.m. until the ball drops. And if you want to be on the show, you can be on the show. You can be on the show. All you have to do is contact me and I will get you set up. People are going to come on and talk about silver linings from 2020, resolutions for 21, predictions for 21. So if you want to actually be a part of it, be a part of it. I welcome you, and just contact me. I'm very easily contactable. I'm doing this show because I think people will be at home. A lot of people will be at home. They won't be out and partying and with their loved ones. And so what an opportunity for us to all be together. So I'll be talking about that all week, but 10 until midnight on Thursday, you want to be a part of it, you can be a part of it. And this whole idea of coming together and being together is absolutely the theme of today's seated soliloquy. The dictionary definition of a kindred spirit is a person whose interests or attitudes are similar to one's own. Now, based on my experiences over the course of 2020, I feel like a bohemian. Freedom, beauty, truth, and love. A bohemian surrounded by my fellow after-show regulars, Tom, Joey, Bob, Jan, Janice's iPad, Leslie, Steve, and Haiti. Together, we have weaved an incredibly intricate and rich tapestry of superpowers, justice, generosity, empathy, resilience, grit, happiness, and of course, hope, positivity, and optimism. The idea of being a kindred spirit is all about togetherness and commonality. The things we believe in, the things we share, the things that unite us. I don't think kindred spirits need to necessarily start off as such, but I do think they have the capability and tendency to morph, evolve, and intertwine over time. They are, like the visual suggests, akin to a flame which burns ever brighter when they are joined, a flame that does not go out when it is given away, quite the opposite. The flame of light is the flame of wealth, and it is the kind of wealth that money cannot buy. It is priceless. Now, if you've been paying attention over the course of the soliloquy, you might have made the connection of another comparison, one that is so obvious and simple, which is another Bohemian principle, by the way. What does the definition and my explanation or interpretation of kindred spirits conjure up for you? What do you think of? Now, if you said community, then we'd be on the same Kindred page. As I was writing this, it struck me that this is precisely what community is about. What powers the ability of a group of strangers to care about each other a little bit more than they should. Community is the spark that can create any solution to every problem, no matter how big, hairy, or audacious it may be. Community is the power within us that becomes a superpower when we join hands and hearts to change the world. Community is the marriage between prophets, people, and planet with a fourth P, purpose. This has been the greatest gift that I have received in 2020, and it is one that I gladly give away because it was never mine to begin with. So thank you for being the spirit that has kindled and ignited the greatest passion and joy within me. It burns brighter every single day and every single episode. And someone who certainly makes me think of community, of kindred spirits, of being brothers from another mother, so to speak, is Mr. Ian Schafer. Ian Schafer is the co-founder and the CEO of Kindred, a professional network community and learning platform built to prepare executives for the future of socially responsible business and leadership. Before Kindred, Ian was the founder and CEO of Deep Focus, a global advertising agency at the forefront of digital and social innovation that he eventually sold to Engine Group in 2010. Prior to Deep Focus, which is when I met him, Ian was vice president of new media at Miramax Films. Ian is a 2015 inductee into the American Advertising Federation's Hall of Achievement, and he is not done yet. Let's bring him onto the show, Mr. Ian Schafer. Welcome to, finally, welcome to Corona TV.
I feel like a comedian who watches like the Tonight Show, like just asking to be brought up and brought back to the couch after they perform, after watching all of their idols speak. So that's what I feel like right now. So thanks for having me on the couch.
And you get to stay on the couch no matter what. In fact, you can come back to the couch anytime you want. But we have some orders of business to attend to. First of all, StreamYard. Now, you are a fellow streamer. You use StreamYard. So I know this is very difficult for you today because you don't know what to do with your hands right now.
Yes, I'm fidgeting with a piece of hardware beneath my.
You see, I can do that, and I can play with it because I can do that, and I can do that, and I can flip you there, and I can make you go full screen. The voice of God. So I've got stuff to do with my hands. You are playing with a piece of wire.
Yeah, do with me as you wish.
Now the other thing is we're kind of looking like twins today. So do you want to put on your Joseph Jaffe glasses?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if we want to do this, we can do this.
Well, you're clearly much better looking than me, but I like the whole black turtle, semi-Jobsian. I don't know what's going on. You can take them off if you want to, but this is kind of cool. I got to get a little screenshot of us. I'll take one afterwards.
Yeah, take one later, and I can even do the accent, but I won't.
Yeah, I can put in my AirPods as well. Now, the third piece of business right now is, of course, StreamYard has decided to introduce new themes. So let's put a comment. Let's put a comment on. Here's Mr. Bob Farnham. Let's determine whether we like the new one, right? This is default, which I've been using. There we go. There is minimal, which I kind of originally started to use and then I changed. But now we have bubble and block. So what do we think? Bubble, toil, and block?
I feel like bubble feels good if people are going to like comment on. It's like pop-up video vibe to me, which
I think that's probably what they were going for. So look, we've got 10. I'm like this. Kent Tomaselli. Tom Morris said to stop in, and Tom said, "This could be the first time in my life that I made a recommendation. Someone listened. Thanks, man. I think Tom has made many recommendations in life, and Seth agrees that it's all about the bubble. So we'll stay with bubble today.
Yeah.
All right. So Mr. Ian Schafer, there are many things to discuss today. Number one is this whole concept of kindred spirits, and you obviously are the CEO of Kindred. I decided to play on that and build on that with the soliloquy around community. But I have to tell you, it is also the name, I think, one of the greatest names of a wine store, Kindred Spirits. So that was, in fact, we've got a Kindred Spirits around the corner from us here in Westport. That was the one thing. The other thing is, got to ask you about this. I'm assuming that that's you. That
is me. So, and if you look closely, you can actually see my reflection in that glass taking a photo.
Oh, there you are
with me. So it's 3 Ians in one photo, which I always thought was fun.
So how come, this is your Twitter bio, and when you see things that are slightly different, as Diane Arbus, one of my favorite quotes, it's what I've never seen before that I recognize. You didn't go with the LinkedIn, formal bio, etc. Why you as a kid?
I feel like in many ways it's preparing people for the level of maturity that I bring to Twitter as a platform. It's also just, honestly, it's like I'm probably most like myself on Twitter. So on LinkedIn, I'll have a proper headshot, even on Instagram. But on actually Instagram, I think that was just a selfie. But on Twitter, I just felt like, this is probably the best distillation of who I am as a human. So let's go with I guess one of the photos that my parents thought was the best distillation of who I was as a human. And I picked that one, which is still on the shelf inside of their home.
Remind me to show you an image of myself from my bar mitzvah. For some reason, my mother, who's watching now, decided to comb my hair to the side. And I sang my entire portion in head voice, in falsetto or soprano. I mean, I may as well have just had a sign on my back saying "beat me up" or "kick me." So I try and stay away from my youth. But
13 is an awkward age.
But the thing that obviously comes out of that is this idea of authentic voice and authentic voice across platforms. I still think that so many people struggle with that, right? And I think even within Twitter, and I do appreciate you talking about your level of maturity, but trust me, I think the Twitter platform itself struggles from a lack of maturity at the best of times. But I think there's a couple of interesting things going on, right? Number one is understanding that you are still yourself authentically, but you have different ways of expressing yourself on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. The other one is still what I lament, because I mean, you and I, we've known each other throughout this whole digital and social media explosion, is how there is still a lack of real conversation or engagement. When you get to be verified or validated on these platforms, all you're doing is just blasting out and broadcasting messages and not really caring at all about taking a few moments every day just to respond.
There's generally, I think we've all been aware of this over the last few years. There's generally a lack of civil discourse. And I think that's partly because we don't reward civil discourse. We reward the fringes, right? We reward extremes. The algorithm on all of these platforms rewards the extremes. And so in many ways, we're getting conditioned. And I guess this was partly on display in that documentary, The Social Dilemma. But I think this is actually cuts deeper, is that we're conditioned to espouse points of view to elicit a reaction rather than positing a fact to explore a conversation. And that's unfortunate. And I honestly don't know how we turn back other than to slow media down. And I don't think that's a possibility. I think that now that we've kind of like touched the flame, we like how it burns, and we're just going to continue burning ourselves with it, until something fundamentally changes. And I have theories on what that needs to be. But look, I co-hosted, I guess, a conversation in Clubhouse last night. and things, Clubhouse, the app, right? Which audio app where people get to have like conversations with each other in kind of like a global public square format. If things were going well for about the first 57 minutes, and then basically we got like room bombed. When people came in and like just disrupted the whole thing, it was an act of vandalism, basically. And we had to, end the room. And unfortunately, when you rely on the community to self-police, sometimes you realize that, a community like that is not filled with expert moderators. They have to learn. And I think that's what's missing on a lot of these platforms too. It's like curators, moderators, people whose job it is to keep, community and conversations healthy. But obviously, all of this is in service of advertising dollars and data. So that becomes a lower priority. And I think we're paying the price for it.
There's, as you were talking about there was a phrase that you mentioned called slow media down. And so I went and decided to coin a new term, which I'm going to now release. It's punny. I know it's punny. And that I get paid by the pun. But there's actually a much deeper understanding or thought behind it. So the term is social media, right? How do we slow it down? How do we put a time limit or a timeout or some kind of or a timer on something like a retweet? For example, if we retweet too many times in a certain period of time, surely there should be some kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like a timer or timeout, that you have to wait until you can do that again. That's how we slow social down.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's been experimenting with this, with the retweet function, and if you're retweeting a story, right? So it says, hey, you didn't click this link. Are you sure you don't want to read it before you share it? That's an example of that, and I'd actually like to see more of that. I was part of a group that Facebook had helped put together earlier this year, alongside Toby Daniels, who's the founder of Social Media Week. And part of the conversation was around just putting a global timer between when you hit post on any platform, right, to when that post actually gets posted. And that's meant to say, are you sure? Keep in mind, you could even, I think as we type, with Grammarly, for example, in Google Doc, it says, kind of what the tone is. We should be able to know if what we're tweeting out or posting on any platform, has an angry tone, an evil tone, a hostile tone. And because it could be unintentional. But, I would rather the algorithm or science or AI get used for things like that to make us think twice about what it is that we're about to say, because our brains do that naturally in real life. That filter has been completely removed when it comes to social media, and I'd like to see that get reintroduced. So
we'll go back a little bit. We're talking about social media, but before there was social media, there was something called the viral video and viral marketing. And in doing my research and in talking to you, we found out some interesting fun facts about you. And this was great because for me, not only did I find out something about you, but it just, as I went into the rabbit hole and deeper I went, I found out some really, really interesting stuff. So you claim to fame. There are many things that that are part of your fame, Mr. Ian Schafer. But one of them is that, you're, I think for your sins, right, you are a crazy Mets fan. For some reason, I'm not sure why you didn't paint your face in this photo, but maybe you can tell me that another time. But
I have an aversion to orange people.
Yeah, but your Mets, your Giants, your Rangers.
Yes.
And of course, Knicks, for all your sins. And you have committed many sins in this world. One of them, for example, is the fact that you are in some way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly responsible. You are responsible for the first banner, for the first ad server, and for online advertising. Is that unfair to pin that all on you?
I wouldn't take credit for this particular ad, but I spent my summers coding what at the time was Unix at Bell Labs in Holmdel, New Jersey. And in 1994, 1993, 1994, one of the first things that we worked on was actually the alpha version of a piece of software called Net Gravity. And I was building the ad server, which was a new thing then, an ad server integration into one of the first ad-supported websites, which was a joint venture between AT&T, which was where I was working, and Rodale Publishing, who published Men's Health, and amongst other publications. And it was a site called AT&T Health Site. It was one of the first, branded media properties, and was also one of the first ad-supported branded media properties. And so literally integrating the alpha version of Net Gravity, which became DoubleClick, which is now, Google's ad server. And so really working on that with some early people, like if you remember, like the folks at one of the first web dev shops, Site Specific, right? And so
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fascinating time to be doing that. And getting a really early understanding of how the internet was going to get monetized. Little did I know that, the banner ads would become programmatic ads, which would also, go to underwrite some of the dark corners of the internet too. And I think these are just, again, once you build something or invent something, you're kind of blinded by the opportunity, and in this sense of optimism washes over you until you realize what other people can do with it. And I think maybe that's what they felt about.
Well, I think I'm gonna give you a hall pass because the reality is, I think history is just filled with the fact that with success always the same thing. Like I didn't even know the term room bombed. I knew Zoom bombed. I've been Zoom bombed even on this show, but I guess I've been on Clubhouse and now I understand room bombed. Stacy DePolo says, "Hi, Joseph and Ian. How cool is this to hear the history? I worked at Look Smart for a bit, so it's cool to hear about how it all started. Do not blame Mr. Schaefer." But here's what we're going to talk about today, which is there was a certain incident at MSG, and turns out that you were the one who shot the viral video of the infamous Charles Oakley fight at MSG in 2017. So for people that don't know about it, let's show a little clip from this is yours, actually. This is your own footage.
Booker's foul is on J.J. Redick. His first, team second. Booker's foul is on DeAndre Jordan. His first, team's first.
All right, so we won't watch the whole thing, but you went and tweeted it, right? So I won't read it for obvious reasons, and you know why. But this tweet goes viral. The video goes viral. How many views to date?
I think it's well over 1 million views on that video.
I think it's even more. I think I saw even north of that. Yeah. But what was so interesting is you suddenly were on the other side as a digital agency, creative pioneer. You've created videos for clients. You've advised. You've recommended. Now you are part of that. And I wanted to just ask you, what did you learn about the innards of viral videos and viral marketing once you were on the inside of it all?
So a few things. I mean, one is that journalists don't pay for footage like that, nor do they donate for charity. So one of the things that I tried to do was actually raise money for charity with that video in the moment as it was happening. So I had reluctantly recorded that because, to be honest, every thought flashed through my mind. With a vindictive owner, do I want to be the one capturing this moment on video, never to be let into Madison Square Garden ever again? But once I got over that and realized, that I was probably on the right side of history. With it, I shared it and I posted it right away. And I was initially reluctant because I know I'm fairly active in like Nick's Twitter, which means I engage with, and in some cases are also like followed back by a bunch of reporters who cover that beat. So I knew that if I published it, it would go like into the news cycle pretty quickly. My seats were literally probably about 50 feet away from where that was happening. And so, as you can see, I had a pretty good shot of it. It wound up becoming pretty definitive footage. Bob Lee at ESPN called it the Zapruder film of the NBA, which I guess is infamous in some way. But reality is that I saw how fast that can go and what it's like to be on the receiving end of something like that, right? So, the mentions go crazy, the direct messages, just go crazy. And I had people in my section literally lending me, backup power supplies so I can respond to all of these things in real time, because like literally every publication, like major publication in the United States needed the license to this footage.
So this is all happening while the game is going on. You're still there in your seat.
And it's a Knicks game, so it wasn't like that interesting. Anyway, in fact, it's probably more. I think Kristaps Porzingis was at the foul line when that was happening. He was watching what was going on in the stands. So it was just like understanding how content licensing works, for example, which is something I thought I understood, but it turns out I didn't. Especially in the news business, and got a really quick education on that. I eventually wound up licensing. Doing a blanket license for it, and it probably generates, I don't know, a couple of bucks a year in terms of licensing fees, because I gave it away for free beforehand. And like I said, like making money from it is nowhere near the intention. But it was interesting to see like what happens when you are the one that captures that news moment. When your video is the one that becomes like the definitive perspective or point of view of an event that everyone was talking about, at least in that moment. And so it was definitely interesting. And I was able to like speak more authoritatively about the anatomy of effectively of a news related viral video.
Right. I mean, I've always said the only way to understand technology or emerging technology is to be a part of it, or is to, and I've said it a little bit kind of flippantly and even self-deprecatingly. I've said, you can't read about any of this stuff in a book except mine. No, even mine. But seriously, it's like, this is not theory. This is, and what I love about this is there's so many layers that can get peeled back to your story, right? One is, as this is happening, you were aware, you were out of body, you were aware of, wait a second, what are the implications going to be of this video just being shared with social media? Like, I wasn't even thinking at the time, but did it cost someone their job? Did it cost me my seat at MSG? Who is going to pay for it? Who is going to make money? Was I going to make money? What were the long-term implications going to be? So I love all of this. But in addition to that, you actually, I was reading this article. So you asked the New York Post to send a "I love you" letter to its publisher and your longtime friend Jesse Angelo, and then you asked the reporter Mike Lamora, a Yankees fan, to sing "Meet the Mets." So I mean, there's a sadistic streak to you, my friend.
Absolutely. So once I couldn't get charitable donations out of this, I'm like, I got it. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there should be some value placed on this video. Like, just giving it away for free doesn't do anything. So I didn't feel like anyone was going to get harmed by this video other than me. So I said, like, why not have fun with it? And when I kind of looked at the profiles of some of the people who were asking them, I was like asking them to perform some kind of simple yet fun task that would basically become the value that they did.
Did they comply?
Most of them did. That is correct. So, someone like sang a Yankee fan who was very proud of it in his social media profile sent me a video of him singing all the lyrics to Meet the Mets. And that was frankly personally satisfying. And so I granted him full license to use the video.
I love that.
In lieu of cash, it turns out, you can get people to do some pretty
You've reimagined licensing. Now, of course, the story does have a very sad ending, which is your most popular tweet of all time. You realize, of course, if you read it closely, so Charles Oakley just got into a fight at next game.
I know. They always have a typo.
If only,
there's no way around it.
If only we had the ability to edit tweets or delete accounts. But that's another story for another day.
It's the only thing preventing me from scrubbing my entire Twitter timeline, by the way. So maybe I'll leave it at that.
That exactly. All right. So we're going to move on, and I felt like we have to touch on this subject before we talk about some of your actual business focus right now. But I met you when you were at Miramax. You understand intimately content and entertainment and Hollywood and the future of, and we could spend an entire show just talking about that, but we won't. What we are going to talk about is, the breaking of theatrical windows, and to quote you, why Wonder Woman 84, WW84 is a bad thing for Warner Brothers to start breaking them with. By the way, Michael Pace said, and I just saw this Facebook post, he said, Wonder Woman 1984 was the 2020 movie of the year, exactly like 2020. Not a glowing endorsement. So talk a little bit about the subject and why, and then obviously, I mean, it just seems everyone's talking about, this movie for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
So basically the big picture here is that most of us here in America have not gone to the theater to see a movie probably since March, right? There's not really many other businesses that could survive that. And to a large extent, I don't know if the movie theater business will. With that said, the movie theater business, if you've heard of the MPAA, right? Motion Picture Association of America, the ones who do the ratings, for example, on films, that is effectively a lobbying group of movie exhibitors, the theater chains, right? And so they have, in the words of Clay Shirky, who I mentioned earlier, they're an institution that is designed to preserve a problem that they are the solution for, right? Is that it is impossible to see a first-run film at home in an experience that is like the movie-going experience of old. So the best way to do that with a group of people and see that moment in popular culture is to come to the movies. By the way, like the number one reason, and this has been the case forever, the number one reason why people go to the movies is not to see a particular film. It's to actually go to the movies. So it is just, again, a very traditional experience that we've grown up knowing and loving, and in some cases loving to hate, but doing it nonetheless. Without the ability to go to theaters, even the movie studios have had to figure this out. Like, is this just like everything about COVID has kind of accelerated the future of work, the future of lots of things, the future of digital, the future of payments. We're looking at is like, what is the future of the movie going experience or the movie staying experience in this case? And so, Warner Brothers, which is owned by Warner Media, which has been owned by AT&T and now has new management in the form of Jason Collar, who, also started Hulu, right? So has got some experience in the world of streaming, has just decided to break the window entirely. And there's been a lot of talk around what window is. Historically, the window is the time that a movie is released in a theater to the time that it gets to you on either like home video, which is what it used to be, or now like subscription video on demand, SVOD. The window is now officially broken, and films are being released day and date in theaters, albeit I think that is just an Oscar qualifier at this point, because no one is really going there. I think it grossed something like $1 million in theaters. Put it in perspective.
Can you believe it? It's incredible.
The original film, I think, grossed $130 million in its opening weekend, right? And so now it is effectively a loss leader for HBO Max, right? And saying, basically, we spent all the money to produce, market, distribute this film, and it's going straight to HBO Max subscribers. So in lieu of a one-off payment, they're basically buying your loyalty or trying to buy your loyalty with this film, saying that we would rather you pay a recurring annual fee, a subscription, rather than you pay the one-off, price of a ticket. And I think that is a calculated decision. I think it's one that portends what the future of the entertainment industry is, in many ways, what the present of the entertainment industry is, which is a function of the constraints put upon it by a global pandemic. But I don't think we're going back to the way it used to be. I think the expectations are such that people expect to get high quality streaming 4K content, which, by the way, Wonder Woman 1984 was not in 4K, notably, but people are used to having that kind of experience at home, right? And so, would you say, I don't know if you've seen both of these properties, Joe, but like, the Queen's Gambit, was that of better, equal, or lesser quality than Wonder Woman 1984? I would say equal.
Yeah,
I would say equal.
100%.
All right, and the budgets were significantly smaller, but the experience was drawn out over a longer period of time, and I think people were certainly engrossed by it.
But that ship had sailed a long time ago. Even when you look at Game of Thrones in terms of the impact of this epic, quite frankly, compared to the movies. But I think you and I, you come from the business, so you always were privy to the sausage factory in of itself. Someone like me on the outside looking in, I predicted a long time ago, but as I said, as did you, that window would eventually just disappear and that movies would be released at the same time. But I don't know that in fact, I can say I never predicted that I would be watching Hamilton for free because I have Hulu, Disney, whatever, that I would be watching Wonder Woman for free, even though I'm paying. I almost felt bad. I almost felt like I should send a tip. I felt like I was robbing, the industry or the studio. It's a weird feeling. I always thought that I'd be paying on demand, but I never thought. So do you think the economics will actually support this?
I do. I think it'll result in things that also happen at the extremes. I think you'll get a lot of experimental stuff, a lot more filmmakers getting access to the same pipeline, for example, both talent and distribution than we've ever had before. But I would also argue that the bigger budget films are going to be less risky. And so you're going to get more superhero films. You're going to get more expansions of franchises like you're seeing with Disney Plus. I mean, they announced their slate, and it's basically 70 extensions of the Star Wars and Marvel universes, cinematic universes. And I think like that is to be expected, but Disney is an IP factory anyway, intellectual property factory anyway. What you want to be able to see is not the death of independent cinema, right? Experimental storytelling. But maybe that's not what we look to the studio system for anymore. Like maybe we look to, people who can, basically make, like, the power of filmmaking ability that we have in this phone is, filmmakers would have dreamed for, for 50 years. So it's very possible to shoot. I mean, and in fact, films are now being completely shot like via iPhones. And it's just something that, again, I think that we should expect more of. But it doesn't necessarily change the amount of scrutiny that we'll place on certain content. And I think, that is what, Wonder Woman 84 like fell prey to, which was that, again, like the marketing engine spinning full steam, but not so much about Wonder Woman 84, but more so for HBO Max. And the collateral damage, I think, was the reception of Wonder Woman 84, which now people don't have the luxury of going out of a theater, walking out of a theater and sharing how you felt with the people that you went to see the film with. The first take is right to social media. And so like releasing a film that people were going to have, again, like a second film in a series, where there was already raised expectations because of the quality of the first film, which I thought was wonderful. The second film, paled in comparison, to say the least. And people's instant hot takes were just as visceral as all the other conversations that happen on social media. And so
I want to just make a statement, and then we'll move on, because there's so much still that I want to talk to you about. But I wonder whether, even with the overwhelming sentiment as it is, so negative against this movie, whether people that actually that certainly that have HBO Max will still watch the movie. Why? Because it's free, or that perceived free, and what those numbers will look like, or in fact, because the perceived risk in terms of incremental investment is so much lower, versus, of course, scenario B is, would people have subscribed to HBO Max solely to watch the movie? Now, I think the answer for that is no, based on the sentiment.
Yeah, well, I think there's so many other opportunities, though, even within the DC universe, right? So there's going to be a director's cut of, Justice League, which a lot of people are very excited about. Maybe even more so because of the way this film turned out. So, look, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for HBO Max to generate revenue. Actually, I'm quite bullish on that platform. The amount of content that they have in the library.
It's unbelievable. I almost feel it's the same thing I feel like with Netflix now. I almost feel like I should be paying more.
So the challenge, though, is going to be, how do you differentiate the films that you expect to be great versus the filler? Right. And so a big part of the entertainment industry is filled with filler. It's like the grains that are in the supermarket dog food. Right. It's not necessary. It's not that good. But the financials of them are good. Because you can make a film for, say, $1 million and sell global distribution rights for $3 million. And that's and therefore quite profitable. And you got a lot of movies like that would normally go straight to on demand that you'd only see ads for. I don't remember that film.
And now, and by the way, Steve says half the HBO Max subscribers already watched, which is crazy.
Huge.
But that's the corollary of social media in a good way, right? Because what has happened throughout this pandemic is people are posting saying, this is, I watched The Queen's Gambit because Lars Bastholm recommended it, and I trust him and his recommendations, and so, that, and then people would just post, hey, I'm done with Netflix. What's next? I finished Netflix. So let's put a pin in that for now, because people are dying to find out what FOFU FOFU Fi Fum. I smell the blood of a black shirted Schaefer. I don't know. What does FOFU stand for?
So I have to confess that this term was actually coined as a reply to an idea that I had from Rob Norman, who is an Englishman.
Yeah.
It's FOFU is effectively the fear of fucking up. And the original way this term was coined was around YouTube's decision to not do a year in review, like their YouTube Rewind, right? Which I thought was, again, just trying to avoid a conversation that might have gotten uncomfortable, but was being had nonetheless. And I thought that was a lame decision, because just because 2020 wasn't filled with just awesomeness. I mean, and we had our share of challenges this year. It's a year in review. It's what happened. Just because you don't do a year in review doesn't mean the year didn't happen. And even Google searches, in review, which is what they do every year, is just not as, I don't know, inspirational as it was in years past.
And there were clearly moments of light. I mean,
yeah.
I'd like to believe I created, or I'm part of this light movement, and the Corona, of course, is a ring of light. So totally. But I have to say, by the way, you are a phenomenal writer.
Thanks, Joe.
You were saying things and I kept on taking another quote and another quote and another quote from this article, but you're using now FOFU on two levels, right? One of them is this idea of leaders being afraid to be more decisive. This is the year of tone deaf marketing messaging. And then, of course, there are employees that are afraid to mess up or take a risk. So I want to just read a couple of things you said. One thing you said, employees are pushing leadership to be more decisive, to take actions internally on all of the positions they've taken externally. I just love the juxtaposition between internal decisiveness and then external messaging, or the disconnect. And then you said something else, which I just was really funny. You said, if Boeing can figure out how to keep making and selling the 737 MAX, you can get over your fear of fucking up on social issues at work. True.
Look how true, like they're still, it's like, you know, stop trying to make fetch happen, right? Like they're trying to make the 737 MAX happen. They're not even changing the name. It is, they will go so far as to now remind people when they book a flight that they were going to be on a 737 MAX. Like that's going to make them feel better, right? About that decision. The same thing holds true for companies, except for in the inverse, right? It's companies have avoided making decisions like that for so long. They've said that, you know what, nobody's paying attention to the diversity problem on our board, so there's no need to really do anything about it. It's not a problem unless someone like makes it one. Guess what? It's a problem now, and it's not going away. And in fact, I think it's such a problem. The literacy of employees and the general public, all of whom are stakeholders in most of these companies, is so high right now. Their access to information so unfettered that they can do the research. So it's not like you can't paint this over with, you know, a TV spot just because it has piano in it. Like you've got to actually do the things inside of your company that reflect the systemic change that you're calling for potentially in your ads. And if that is not being done, then what are you doing? And employees are going to see right through that. I think in many ways, I think I say that in this piece, that employees are the conscience of a company. Their voices, especially now that in so many companies that they are distributed, right? And so people are working from home, and their tether, their lifeline back to the office is email, Slack, you know, other forms of workplace communication. The fear of saying something that is going to get you looked at wrong in a meeting or in the cafeteria or in the hallway is kind of gone. So employees are losing their fear of speaking up, while employers are, you know, kind of like digging in and re-entrenching themselves in the fear of making a decision that might piss those employees off. But there needs to be a sense of urgency that says we can't afford to do that anymore. The longer we avoid making these decisions, the worse these problems are going to get.
Right.
The more systemic they're going to be. And I think now is the time to realize that.
And we live in a world clearly of Glassdoor, and going back to social media, you can see the red thread that ties back to your viral video, that employees are going to anonymously or otherwise tell the world what they think of you based on what happens inside. You know, the walls of a corporation, first of all, are not even physical anymore. They're virtual because of COVID, and they're also made of glass. They're not made of brick. And it's just, but it's funny that human nature is to double down on conservatism when times are tough. And so you said, I'm going to read another quote from this article. And by the way, I've pasted a link to that article in the comments. You said, when leaders are under pressure, they tend to take the fewest risks. And even when decisions aren't risky, any decision that feels different is less likely to be made. For example, and this blew me away, right? So much for Me Too. Since March, only 3% of new CEO picks have been women. I mean, we have not made much progress at all.
Well, we started to, right? And then that's what happens. It's like, you know, a sense of activism sometimes washes over a corporation, but that's usually because it's in favor of the news cycle. Once the news cycle like turns its attention to something else, that activism goes away. And I think that's what we see in that statistic, but that's unacceptable because the pendulum is going to swing right back. Yes, we are very fickle, you know, in terms of what we pay attention to in news cycles. But again, once you become enlightened or aware, or people like to say like woke, like about something, like really understand it, really comprehend it, it's only going to get like more attention is only going to get paid to it over a longer period of time. That's why when I look at the role of purpose inside of an organization right now, I look at it as an era of business transformation. In the same way that, you know, we learned that there was an existential crisis that had to drive digital business transformation, that if they didn't figure this out, they were going to lose ground to their competitors, right? Or go out of business or become irrelevant. I think the same thing holds true with issues of mental health in the workplace, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, sustainability, you know, decarbonizing the supply chain. Like all of these things are about optimizing the future value of a business. And when you could talk about it in those practical terms, I hope that businesses can make those practical decisions, because I think historically they've just been too emotional. And I think that's what that sentiment, even about individual people, is what has prevented them from getting the purchase inside of a company that they rightly deserve. And so
what I find so interesting is when I look at, Ian Schafer 2020, you've founded a new company, you've reinvented yourself, as have I, going down an interesting path. We're not agency people anymore, creating ads or even advising how to optimize social media strategy or anything like that. What you've done is you've actually created a company that is, almost empowering and training, from what I see, the next wave and generation of leadership, because the failure, does not compute the error 404 redirect here, is the fact that our leaders are not equipped, to be woke or otherwise. Forget about woke, to cope with this changing, diversifying world and unpredictable landscape. And that's what I think you're doing through Kindred. Am I right in terms of?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, if you remember back, in the early days of digital, like, you had CEOs of company who knew nothing about it. And I think that's exactly what's happening now. You have CEOs of companies who knew nothing, really nothing, about issues related to diversity, climate, and all this stuff. And they don't realize the consequences of their decisions or lack of decision, right? And I think that's what they need to understand right now. And so when I think about, Kindred, yes, it is a network of leaders who are committed, hence like the name Kindred, right? Like you talked about, it's and by the way, like, it's just as much like the notion of a Peloton, right? It's like you get to where you're going faster when you're traveling together there as a group. And I think that holds true, for what we're building as well. But it's not just about the community elements of the collaboration and the accountability. It's also about the learning, the training, and the development. And not, while we're starting today with like the executive leaders, the people who are able to make decisions on behalf of a company right now, where we will be going is for anybody who works at a company, because they're the ones who are making the micro decisions, of course, through the lens of that company's culture. And those micro decisions are filled with things like, bias and, lack of an understanding of the consequences of even those small decisions. And those small decisions add up. So I mean, basically, this is about behavior change at the end of the day, but behavior change where there is a definitive return on that investment. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to align, and to go back to your soliloquy, it is about aligning profit and purpose. It's got to be, because that's what literally by definition makes a company sustainable, not just in terms of the materials that they use or the carbon offsets that they employ, but the sheer sustainability of their own business model. Like, you can't succeed by exploiting the people who work for you and the communities that you work within. You've got to find a way to again, have some kind of codependence in a healthy way, where everyone gets better because of the success of the company. And then in that way, we could be giving them the benefit of the doubt instead of, again, pre-canceling people, for the decision that we think they're going to make.
I almost, it's funny when you talk about canceling or cancel culture or pre-canceling. In fact, in a previous episode, it may have, I forget, it may have been with Dave Patnaik from Conscious Capitalism, but we almost spoke about how do you cancel culture, but it's almost this idea of that hall pass, the ability to make a mistake once, but never again. And this is your quote today that I matched for you, which is, never fear to make mistakes, be courageous enough not to repeat it. And I feel like if we could, whether it was, Twitter etiquette, or whether it's employee engagement, or whether it's dealing with this new wokeness around us, whether it's leadership or employee based, we've got to figure out, I feel like we need to figure out an easier barrier to entry, maybe a lower barrier to entry or bar, but a higher to exit. The standards have to be higher once you've at least, messed up once. But if we can be a little bit more forgiving that first time, especially if someone comes forward and asks for help, I feel the world could be a better, kinder place. Or am I being too naive?
Well, I mean, this always comes down to accountability. Like you're not going to believe someone when they say, "Baby, I've changed," when they've said that 5 times before.
Right.
And so they've got to be held accountable. And I think they need to be held accountable by employees. They need to be held accountable by their boards. They need to be held accountable by the public. And whether that's like public investors or the court of public opinion, those are maybe 2 like separate things. But they need to also like hold themselves accountable and chart a path. Like, where are we going to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and be okay if they don't achieve those goals. Odds are they're going to set those goals, at a level that they're going to be able to hit just to manage expectations anyway. But I think that goal setting is important, from an accountability standpoint. And a lot of companies have their like 2020 vision, speaking of puns, that they set in place, a few years ago, coming due right now. And in many ways, they've fallen woefully short. And a lot of companies have just added another 5 years to the event horizon. But I think accountability is so critical, but it's not worth holding somebody accountable for if they don't know what the consequences are. And I think that's part of what we're witnessing right now. People are learning the consequences of bad decisions and are hopefully investing in platforms like Kindred, to make them feel more confident about the decisions that they have to make, because no one wants to make a decision that they're not confident in.
But by the way, at 12:01 on January 1st, for the first time ever, hindsight will actually be 2020.
That's correct.
So, thank God. And don't let the door hit you on the way out. I would probably add a third piece to what I think is a phenomenal framework or rubric, right? Where 1 is accountability, 2 is charting a path. I would say the third is transparent, early and often, transparent, frequent, and consistent communication of that accountability and progress, not just internally, but even externally. And that's probably the hardest one for companies to do, right? To show that vulnerability and that ability to actually say, hey, we may have kind of veered off the path, but we're going to try and figure out how to get back on it.
Well, we used to have I'm old enough to remember Mayor Ed Koch in New York. And his catch line was, "How am I doing?" Right. And honestly, I think that's like, companies should be asking that all the time. It should be an implied, like, how are we doing? Not like as a, customer success story or a survey that they do, but an actual feedback loop. Right. And so people understand where their progress is doing, and whether that's self-reporting or making yourself available for an audit, which I'd recommend. It's important to have that sense of accountability, and to make people know that, again, like there is a bar that we've set, not just for our company, but for the people who work here. And if we're not meeting it, then something needs to change.
Simple, elegant, just much like when you go into a restroom now, or even at Heathrow, where you have the quick, that company, I forget what their name is, but you could just punch up, whether it's the smiley face, the frowning face, or, the ambivalent face. I
was glad when I see those, because the last thing I want to do when I leave a bathroom is touch something that everyone else has already touched.
Well, these days, going into a bathroom or an airport sounds like as much
exotic, very exotic,
a fantasy as the background today. Ian, I knew this would be the kind of conversation that we'd run out of time, but the good news is we have our after show. So Jan's question about how is conscious capitalism impacted by the one industry where conscious capitalism seems to be lagging the banks, or Bob saying, cool, that Kindred is a B Corp. How did the employees feel about that choice? You can answer both of those in the after show. And if people want to come and join us for 30 more quality minutes with Mr. Ian Schafer, all you got to do is just come and hang out with us. bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. Ian, I had to adjust this. You are guest number 179. And it's one that I won't forget ever, not even in a hurry. You can follow Ian on the Twitter at @Schaefer, or Instagram, Schaefer. The man knows a thing or two about consistent branding. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. And most importantly, what I want you to do is subscribe to his terrific newsletter on LinkedIn, and I will provide, well, you can, pause the video afterwards, but I will post a link as well. Do I have to do everything for you guys? I'm just kidding. If you want to apply for membership at Kindred, just go to kindredmembers.com. I have already applied today, and I'm excited to be with you on this journey and do my part. And then finally, Ian has a monthly recurring guest and segment on the Atlantia podcast. So there's still a little bit of ad inside him. And so subscribe to that and check it out. Ian, before we go, we have a Corona question, which is, what is the one silver lining, if any, that you'll take away from 2020?
Always have a plan B. I started this year having just raised a seed round for a company whose primary product was an event. And here we are at the end of the year with a thriving networking community of people committed to doing the very thing that we were just trying to catalyze the conversation around with an event. And yes, unfortunately, COVID was the thing that catalyzed the conversation and made us realize just how intersectional all of these issues are, not just with each other, but with business. And, again, it's just, we had that as part of our plan, the network, the community, the learning platform. But it was our kind of next phase of development. But because we were prepared for that, we were able to pull those plans forward. And so I'm not saying plan for a pandemic or even plan for the worst. But just, again, the trick of starting anything is to be agile enough, to be nimble enough, to go where the tide is going, to go where the momentum is going, and to know that could change on a dime, and to not have it undermine every great idea that you thought you had. So it's a very humbling experience for me to think I was so right and then turned out to be so wrong. But that's how you get better. That's how you iterate. And if you think about everything that you do as a product, it makes the feedback that you get from putting that product out there that much more important. So every time, for example, I get an opportunity to speak to you, Joe, in public, I will take it because, I've learned even things about what I wrote that land differently when you say them, frankly. And so again, it's important to get those signals out there so you can even know what the noise
Right.
is.
Always be open to possibilities and always have a plan B, because if you don't have a plan B, you know who's coming for you. Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Well, you're fortunate enough because, he's not coming after you.
He was a different kind of ranger, not the ranger on.
We'll be back tomorrow, and Ian and I are going to hang out a little bit in the Zoom after show. I will see you then. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.